In this tutorial, we explore merging multiple PDFs into a combined PDF. We call the PDF endpoint first directly by calling the endpoint in Postman. Next, we illustrate calling the endpoint using each of DynamicPDF's 6 client libraries. DynamicPDF has client libraries for Node.js, .NET, Java, PHP, Go, and Python. You must first have a DynamicPDF API account before you can complete this tutorial. If you don't have an account, you can sign up for one free. You can sign up using your Google or Microsoft account, or you can create a local account. But I already have an account, so I'm going to log in to the DynamicPDF API. But before we do that, let's start by reviewing the PDF endpoint. The PDF REST endpoint is an endpoint you can integrate into your applications to create PDFs. Let's use the merge PDF sample application and use the PDF endpoint to merge 3 PDFs into a combined PDF. How it works is we're going to call the PDF endpoint with an instructions.json document, 2 PDFs from our local file system, and a PDF in cloud storage. The 2 PDFs and the instructions.json are sent as post request files to the PDF endpoint. Then, DynamicPDF uses the instructions.json to combine the 2 uploaded files and the file in cloud storage to create a new PDF. The combined PDF is then returned from the PDF endpoint as binary. So let's go ahead and start by going to the DynamicPDF API website and logging into the portal. After logging into the portal, you're first taken to the DynamicPDF dashboard. The dashboard is where you work with your Cloud API account. Select Files and open the File Manager. Next, select Samples, and then click Add Samples to open a listing of available sample applications. Be sure to spend some time familiarizing yourself with the available samples, as there are sample applications for all of the DynamicPDF API's major features. Find the Merge PDF sample application, select the sample, and add the sample. Download Document A, Document B, and instructions.json to your local file system. After downloading, I move the files to the following folder. I assume this path for the remainder of the tutorial. Open instructions.json and we see a JSON file that contains the instructions for processing. Using the PDF endpoint, the instructions file specifies 3 PDFs, where the first 2 are coming from our local file system, and the last one is coming from cloud storage. DynamicPDF uses the instructions.json to merge these 3 PDFs. Each input is processed individually, and the results are then merged into a combined PDF. Now that we downloaded the files, let's use Postman to call the PDF endpoint. In this tutorial, I assume you have a Postman account and that you're logged into Postman. You can access the DynamicPDF API public collection by clicking one of the Run in Postman buttons in our documentation. Click the button and fork the collection. Wait for Postman to fork the collection and open it. Change the fork label to something meaningful. I'm just going to change the fork label to Merge Tutorial Fork. Click the Fork Collection button to complete processing. It then forks the project. Go to Environments, and we need to set the environment variables. Click Environments, then click DynamicPDF API. Okay, we need to set the API key. Return to the portal and go to API keys. Okay, let's show and hide the key, just so you can see the full key. Click the copy icon to copy the key to your clipboard. Return to Postman. Post the key in the current value property. Persist all, and then save. Now go to Collections and select the PDF template. If we hover over the API URL parameter, notice it's not set. That's because we haven't set the endpoint's environment. Go up here to the right and change the environment to DynamicPDF API. Hover over Authorization and then URL, and you can see they're both resolved by the environment. Select body, and we see keys for instructions and resource. Add the instructions JSON document from your local file system. Add document A to resource. Then create a new resource key and add document B. Don't forget to change the type from text to file. Recall that document C is actually in cloud storage, so the instructions document handles document C. We don't need to set a parameter here. Click Send, and the request is sent to the PDF endpoint. It generates the PDF and then returns it as binary. Review the generated PDF and note that the returned PDF is the merged document. Of course, if you didn't want to use Postman, you could always use something like curl. Now let's use the C# client library. You can download the sample application at GitHub. Open .NET Client examples and clone it to your local file system. Here I'm using GitHub Desktop, so I'm going to clone it using that. Okay, now I'm going to open it in Visual Studio. Over here in the projects, notice the Merge PDFs tutorial project. Expand it and open program.cs. Notice that main calls the Merge PDFs run method in the DynamicPDF Client Library examples project. Now check dependencies, and we see that the DynamicPDF Client Library example project is added as a dependency. Okay, now open the DynamicPDF Client Library examples project. Expand the resource folder, and note that the resources are already added to the project. So we already have document A, document B, document C, and instructions.json. So we're going to use the paths to these files. Expand examples and open merge pdfs.cs. This is the actual class that is doing the processing. Notice that the DynamicPDF API is not visible by the project. So we need to add the NuGet package so that the DynamicPDF API is part of the project. Navigate to Manage NuGet Packages. Find the DynamicPDF.API NuGet package. Okay, click Install. Click OK. Wait for NuGet to install the client library. Now that it's installed, close the tab. Okay, now the client library is visible. Okay, open program.cs and review the source. It calls the merge PDFs run method, passing the API key, the path to the resources, and the path to the outputted PDF. Okay, so let's go back to merge PDFs and let's review the code. First, it creates a new PDF instance and then sets the API key. It then adds document A from the local file system as a PDF resource. It does the same for document B. Now for document C, it adds the resource directly to the PDF endpoint using the relative path to the document on cloud storage. Let's double check that path is correct. Return to the portal and right-click document C. Select Copy File Path. Now go ahead and go back and paste it, and we see that the file path has remained unchanged. The PDF instance next calls the process method. That method calls the PDF endpoint and returns the results as binary. If the processing is successful, the code saves the output as a PDF document. Okay, let's go back to program.cs. And we need to add the API key. So return to the portal and copy the API key. Now paste the key. And now let's run the application. Click Merge PDFs tutorial and run the application. Okay, close the command window. And now navigate to the output folder. And there's the produced PDF. Open it, and we see that the PDF is a combined PDF of the other three documents. Now let's use the DynamicPDF API's Java client library to merge the PDFs. You can download the sample application at GitHub. Open Java client examples and clone it to your local file system. Here, I'm using GitHub Desktop, so I'm going to clone it using that. I also use Eclipse, so I'm going to assume Eclipse for the remainder of this tutorial. Open the project in Eclipse. Import the project as an existing Maven project. Find the folder and click Select Folder. Now click Finish. Okay, after the project loads, expand the project and navigate to the POM file. Notice the version of the DynamicPDF API. Let's go ahead and make sure that's correct. Okay, we navigate to Sonatype and look up the client library and ensure the version's the latest. And we see the version is now 1.7, not 1.6. Let's copy the dependency and return to the Eclipse project. Replace the dependency information with the content in our clipboard. Right-click on the POM and run maven build to build the jar file. Wait for the application to build. Now navigate to the com.dynamicpdf.api.examples package and select merge pdfs.java. Let's review the code. The main method passes the API key and the path to the resources to the class's static run method. Now let's go to DynamicPDF Cloud API examples and review the properties. We need to add the API key, so navigate to the portal and copy the API key. Okay, now paste the API key. You don't need to worry about all this extra code. That's just if you wanted to run all the examples at once. And return to merge PDFs. Remember earlier we created the merge PDFs PDF endpoint folder and copied the resources to that folder. We're going to use that folder for the base directory and the outputs directory. Okay, so let's go back to merge PDFs and let's review the code. Okay, now reviewing the source code, we see that we first create a new PDF instance. We then set the API key. We add document A and document B from the local file system. Then notice that document C is added using the relative path on cloud storage. Let's double check that path is correct. Return to the portal and right-click document C. Select Copy File Path. Now go ahead and go back and paste it, and we see that the file path has remained unchanged. The PDF instance next calls the process method. That method calls the PDF endpoint and returns the results as binary. Now click on Merge PDFs and select Run As Java Application. Okay, after finishing, navigate to the output folder and we see the created PDF. Go ahead and open it, and we see the merge PDF created from the three documents. Let's use the Node.js client library. You can download the sampled Node.js client library at GitHub. Open Node.js client examples and clone it to your local file system. Here, we use GitHub Desktop to clone it. Now that it's cloned, I'm going to open it in Visual Studio Code. We need to add the client library to our sample project, so let's do that now. Remember, we just added the client library examples, not the actual Node.js client library. So let's open the terminal. Now get the npm command from the documentation. Paste it and run the command. After the client library installs, open the mergepdfs.js file. Notice document A and document B are being loaded from the path we established earlier. And document C is coming from the relative path on cloud storage. Return to the portal and navigate to the file manager. Right-click on document C and select Copy File Path. Return to the code and replace the path to ensure the path is still correct. And it appears like it didn't change, so we're good to go. Now let's add the API key. Okay, so return to the portal, select API keys and copy the API key. And now return to Visual Studio Code and paste the API key. Okay, so now the PDF instance calls its process method, which calls the PDF endpoint, and then returns the results. If the results are successful, then it writes the output to a file. Otherwise, it logs the error in the console. Now run the application in the terminal. Now that it's done processing, navigate to the output folder. Open the produced PDF and notice it merged the three PDFs. Now let's use a PHP Client Library. You can download the sample application at GitHub. Open PHP Client Examples and clone it to your local file system. Here we used GitHub Desktop. After cloning, let's open it in Visual Studio Code. We need to add the client library to our project, so let's do that now. Open the terminal. From the DynamicPDF API documentation, get the composer commands needed to install the client library. Return to terminal and run those commands. Okay, now open mergepdfs.php. Notice the run function takes an API key, path, and output path as parameters. This comes from another file, DynamicPDFExamples.php. Open the file and note the base path and output path are relative to the current directory. We need the API key, so let's return to the portal. Okay, copy the API key. Now return to PHP. Paste the API key. Now the base path and the output path are both relative paths to the project. Ensure the DynamicPDF examples run method is commented out to prevent it from running. We don't want to run all the examples. Now go to the resources folder and we see the files are part of the project. And we need to create the output folder. Okay, now return to the mergepdfs PHP file. Now uncomment the mergepdfs run method so we can run the application from this file. Okay, now let's review the code. First, it creates a new PDF instance. It then sets the API key. Next, it adds document A and document B from the local file system. And then it adds document C from the relative path in cloud storage. Let's double check that path is still correct. So let's return to the portal. And then from the file manager, right-click document C and select Copy File Path. Return to PHP and paste the file path. and we see it didn't change. Okay, so now let's see. The PDF instance then calls a process method, which calls the PDF endpoint and returns the generated PDF. Now run the merge PDF's PHP application in the terminal. Okay, navigate to the output folder and open the produced PDF. And there we go. The PDF is the 3 combined PDFs. Let's review the Python client library. Get the Python client examples from GitHub. Here we use GitHub Desktop to clone the application. And now that it's cloned, I'm going to open it in Visual Studio Code. And we need to install the actual Python client library. So open the terminal. And now let's get the code to install the client library. Go to the DynamicPDF API documentation and get the pip command from the documentation. Now paste it in the terminal and run the command. Now open the merge PDF's Python file. Notice the merge PDFs command obtains the API key and path as variables. These variables come from the shared Python file. Open the file and note the API key and path. The paths are both relative to the samples project. We need to get the API key, so return to the portal and copy the API key. Return to Python and paste the API key. Okay, so the path is relative, so notice the resources are already part of the project in a folder named resources. But we still need to create a folder for the output, so create a folder named output. Okay, now that we've done that, return to merge PDFs, and let's review the code. It first creates a new PDF instance. It then gets document A and document B from local storage as PDF resources. Then, rather than adding the local resource, we add document C from cloud storage. Let's make sure this relative path is still correct. Return to the portal and open the file manager. Right-click on document C and select Copy File Path. Now return to Visual Studio Code, and now let's paste that path. And the path didn't change. The PDF instance then calls the process method to call the PDF endpoint and return the results. If it's successful, it writes the merged PDF to the file system. In the terminal, run the merge PDF's Python application. Now let's navigate to the output folder and open the produced PDF. And we see it's the 3 documents merged into a combined PDF. Let's use the Go client library to merge PDFs using the PDF endpoint. Get the sample project from GitHub. And here we clone the project using GitHub Desktop. After cloned, we're going to open it in Visual Studio Code. So open the project in Visual Studio Code. We only downloaded the samples project, not the actual client library, so we need to get the client library. From the DynamicPDF API documentation, copy the needed Go command. In the terminal, and paste and run the command. After installing, open the merge PDFs file. Notice here in the Go example, it gets the resources from the folder we established earlier in the tutorial. Document A and document B both come from our local file system, while document C comes from cloud storage. Let's ensure the relative path is correct. Return to the portal and right-click Document C in the File Manager. Select Copy File Path to copy the relative path. Return to Visual Studio Code and paste the path. And we see the path was correct. Okay, now we need to get the API key. So return to the portal and copy the API key. Okay, now paste the key. The PDF instance next calls the process method. That method calls the PDF endpoint and returns the results as binary. If the processing is successful, the code saves the output as a PDF document. Okay, now we can run merge PDFs in the terminal. Now let's navigate to the output folder and open the produce PDF. And we see that the merged PDF was created successfully. Now when merging, it doesn't have to be other PDFs. You can merge other input types such as Word documents, HTML documents, and images. Refer to the online documentation for more information. I'm James, Developer Evangelist at DynamicPDF, reminding you, when you think PDF, think DynamicPDF API. See you next time.